Now, I have to be completely honest, the iPhone 14, without a doubt, is probably one of the best phones Apple's ever made, but I also think it's one of those iPhones that a lot of people actually love. And when it comes down to the sales numbers of the iPhone 14s and just how good of an iPhone the 14 is in general, it's funny because when it first came out, I really wasn't like the biggest fan of this particular device. I do think in a lot of different ways, it was like a kind of okay phone. Like I feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job, especially with that chipset. But now that this iPhone has been out for a little bit of time, almost 2 years now, I definitely do think it's grown on me, and for sure it's a very, very good iPhone. And this is probably one of the iPhones that everyone loves the most in my opinion, and everyone's going to love this iPhone even more later on this year when it sees another significant price drop. So the iPhone 14, the 2022 base model iPhone, without a doubt, very decent iPhone build quality wise. It was the same exact thing for better or for worse as the iPhone 13, but there were some big assets and big last, hurrahs of the iPhone 14. This was the last iPhone to have that notch as far as we can tell. It was also the last iPhone to bring that solid glass back with a lightning port. Since this particular iPhone, this is an iPhone that a lot of those last backs, a lot of those last hurrahs of this particular iPhone basically came out with this particular device. We'll probably never get an iPhone with a lightning port. We'll probably never get an iPhone with a notch, and we'll probably never get an iPhone with a, standard glass back ever again for their baseline iPhones. Maybe for their SEs we may see it, but for their baseline iPhones, probably not. And that in and of itself, I think, is a pretty significant thing. I think the build quality of the iPhone, though, is still very good. I think the display of this iPhone is still very good. I still think this thing having the port selection it has is still perfectly fine. But I think the biggest asset for this phone is still the performance. When it came out, it did have that Apple A15 Bionic chip, which really isn't that great. I think we all know this by now. I mean, it's a really good chipset, don't get me wrong, but they should have put the A16 Bionic. This thing had the same chipset as the iPhone 13 at the time, but I did appreciate a lot that this iPhone did bring 6GB of RAM. I do think this in and of itself is kind of one of the bigger, I would say, maybe biggest features of this particular phone, was that you were getting that type of capability right out the gate, which I genuinely do think was very cool. I do think if you're buying some sort of device like this, definitely having a phone that had a newer chipset may have been a little bit better, but I think regardless, this is still a very, very good phone from that perspective. And I genuinely, as I said before, I don't really have that much to complain about here with these particular devices. And I do think at the end of the day, Apple did a really good job with this particular phone, and I still think it's completely worth buying. And when I look back at phones that everyone loved the most, phones like the iPhone 11, phones like the iPhone 13s, the 14s are up there too. The 15s are going to get there as well, but this is probably one of those phones that Apple's still selling that a lot of people end up loving, and the sales numbers kind of reflect that. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.